The weather there on BBC One. Now it seems the north of England aren't the only ones expecting a frosty reception next weekend. Here's the day after the match. Hello there and welcome to the day after the match. After a busy weekend, we've had a lot of big results in the Premier League. 6 games feature in this week's day after the match. We're joined by Manny Durfee and Rika Mitchards due to their counterparts being unavailable. It was a difficult week for some teams with big questions needing to be answered and the press jumping on their backs. I wonder what that's like. We begin with Liverpool, who after their stairway to 7 came crashing back down to reality with a tough match at Bournemouth. James Allcott, watch this one. Let's start off with the big shock from the weekend. Bournemouth 1, Liverpool 0, 0.86 XG to 1.75. There was a penalty in there as well, of course, for Liverpool. Now, Liverpool beat this team 9-0 at the start of the season. 9-0. And it's another great example of how football can just slap you in the face. Love it. They were given a shock this Saturday, and I kind of saw it coming a little bit. I wouldn't dare say it because I think you get yourself in trouble. But off the back of the Man United one, it was such a different game, and Bournemouth, they didn't bow down to them at all, and they didn't allow the sort of freedom of the park, and importantly, space in behind as well. And Liverpool, at times, struggled with that. And let's start with Liverpool, because we've got to give Bournemouth loads of credit. And normally people go, before we talk about the backlash to the big team, let's talk about the other. No! We're going big on Bournemouth, okay?
40,500,000 all in.
But we have to get Liverpool out the way. That's right, we have to get Liverpool out the way on this occasion. Because that's what we do here at the day after the match. It's a good name, isn't it? Fallout's better though, isn't it? Anyway, Liverpool had 69% possession and did create decent chances. Let's remember that. So I'm wary of kind of getting too heavy on it. But obviously it's a very, very disappointing result. Liverpool created 4 big chances, as I said, in total during the 90 minutes, but only registered 1.75 XG. So bear in mind that 0.79 of that was Mo Salah's missed penalty. That's where I get a little bit confused with the numbers here. But the chances that were created were still, although big chances weren't that easy, right? Liverpool's biggest problem in this one was that they didn't take their chances when they had their foot on the throat of Bournemouth. And in the first 25 minutes or so, Liverpool had sustained pressure. It looked like they were going to be the better team. They were going to batter them once again. But after this pressure, there wasn't sort of that sort of fiery Liverpool that you would expect. They looked like they've sort of waned a little bit. I think often this can happen. But what I would say is that the best Liverpool, you don't see this, you know. Like, is this a symptom of the sort of highs of the 7-0 match affecting them and they think, okay, well, look, it's Bournemouth, we're dominating after 25 minutes, we'll win this game? Because that's what happens with a lot of teams, certainly happens with QPR when I'm watching them. But the one thing that, you know, Liverpool get described as mentality monsters. So it now feels like they kind of lose that fire or concentration, or is it a lack of edge? Is that a fair critique, guys? Let me know, Liverpool fans, if you agree with that, because they should have won this game. But anyway, let's get on to Bournemouth, because defensively they impressed me massively, made it so difficult for Liverpool, and they also had intelligent tactical attributes to them which allowed them to win this fixture. Starting off with the defence, Bournemouth made a total of 34 clearances, which again can be used as a stick to sort of beat Liverpool, but you've got, you know, great crosses of the ball out there, so you can understand that. And again, going to the stats and kind of looking beyond the stat a little bit, is Liverpool attempted 25 crosses, but only 4 of them were accurate. And the word accurate is a dangerous one, because I think actually they probably were accurate, but the defence of Bournemouth was so strong that they were able to get rid of the ball. I don't think that Trent puts in too many bad crosses. So for Bournemouth to be switched on and defend so brilliantly and be proactive in going and winning the ball, I thought was really impressive. Tactically, we need to talk about Dango Ouattara. We spoke about him last week, I think, or maybe the week before, but I've been really impressed with him so far. He offers something really, really nice to this Bournemouth team that will often be defending quite deep, so it needs to be able to counter-attack. So firstly, his role on the right-hand side as the most advanced forward player allowed Bournemouth to target the channels and transition extremely quickly. It was the Arsenal game, I've just remembered. In the Arsenal game, we were talking about those teams that kind of just leave 2 at the back. There will be a lot of space out in those channels on the counter-attack. And I have been thinking about this for quite some time, since the Man City Leeds game, when Leeds got a victory despite having 10 men, I think it was. Because what they did was they literally just played a forward, but out wide. And I was thinking, why don't teams do that more often? Because you're going to have one guy up there who generally isn't able to get on the ball. Now, I'm sure probably we could pick holes in this, but it was a thought that those areas are, especially against the Arsenals, the Liverpools, the Man Cities, the teams that are going to have two at the back like that. There is an area for a fast-paced forward with quality to do something. And with Rothwell in midfield, you've got someone who can find them, which I quite like as well. So Bournemouth were able to target the channels and transition extremely quickly into that area that Robertson vacated. Dango made 5 successful dribbles, and his pace and quick feet created the only goal. So his heat map, you can see here, it shows how his role was also multi-dimensional, though, as he was just as effective in terms of his defensive contribution, which is going to be so important for any Bournemouth player or any team down the bottom there, making 5 clearances as well. A huge performance from him. I think it's also important to discuss Philip Billings' role. Again, we spoke about him and how, as a third-man runner, he can kind of unlock and make it difficult for that back two once again. His movement, it really unlocks this Bournemouth side, and it allows them to score goals. Over the last 2 games, I've noticed how important his role has been as that third-man runner for Bournemouth, and his role means that Bournemouth don't have to play 2 strikers up top, because when they do win the ball, he has that freedom to break, and it's actually something we're seeing with Everton as well. If you think of Doucouré and Onana, having those players, even Brentford as well, actually, with someone like Jensen, who's able to sort of go. Having those kind of players, I think, is actually becoming more and more important for the teams down the bottom, because it's an important part to play in the structure of the team. And you can see that both from his average positions, but also through his reception of the ball in the centre of the park, he was a massive, massive part of this victory for Bournemouth. And for Bournemouth, when they play those teams that are going to dominate against them, to have him and his energy and quality and goal threat could be really, really important in the running. Everton 1, Brentford 0, 1.03 to 2.10 XG. Brentford always win the XG battle, but they didn't win this one. But that said, this was the smashiest grab you've ever seen. And there is an area which I think would concern Everton fans. So the styles were clear to see. Let's put it that way. And there are a few big moments in this one, and as you watched it unfold, you began to think that Everton may not be able to hold on for much longer. If you have a look at the momentum bar, you can see how they really, really not fell apart, but waned massively. That is the fact that they're able to get around it is a huge positive, but I think there's also a fear there that they did retreat the way that they did. I'm not really sure, actually. Do you know what? I'm going to put it to the Everton fans, because you can spin it both ways. You can kind of go, ooh, they tired there, but they also hung on. So how do you feel about that second half and how much Brentford were on Everton in this one? Obviously, it means it doesn't matter at all. You got the victory. But down the road, if it's 0-0 and you've not got that energy, is that something to be concerned about, especially when you're only playing 1 game a week? So how did the match go? The goal came as a bit of a shock for everyone, I think, in Goodison, not only because it came so early, but it was quality, and it was from Dwight McNeil, who I was chatting to Baz on the ripple effect this week. If you're an Everton fan, by the way, really, really pleased with this podcast that came out. We put it out on Friday. Baz talking about the 7 years of Moshiri and the ripple effect of having Moshiri as the owner. What was the turning point? What would it be like if they got relegated? And what are the hopes for Everton fans? So if you are an Everton fan, or even if you're not, I think you'll find it really, really interesting, that podcast. I'm really enjoying the guests we're getting on with the podcast. So go check it out if you do get a chance. I'll put a link in the description. Back to McNeil. We were talking about him and how he was probably one that they shouldn't have signed. Baz alluded to that and told me off camera, and it was obvious he was talking about McNeil. But he was actually pretty good throughout. He was excellent. Dwight was all right, you could say. McNeil's stats were really impressive across the board. He didn't really do much offensively after his goal, but no one did. But defensively, he was a bit of a joke, actually, against Brentford. He made 3 clearances, blocked 2 shots, made 1 interception, 2 tackles, and most importantly, he made a clearance off the line. Demarai Gray's goal as a striker is a really interesting part of this team as well. I think he's come in and offered something that others haven't, especially with Dominic Calvert-Lewin out. And whilst it probably is not something that Dyche would do if he wasn't forced into it, it does offer Everton the ability to press in a way that they might not be able to with Calvert-Lewin up front. And the big problem is that Everton don't have a target man, as we know. So when Everton clear the ball, they struggle to win the first contact and therefore invite pressure onto themselves. But his feet are great. He can get on the ball. He can hold it up a little bit more. They got around this in the first half by structuring well put together pressing moves. But in the second half, you could visibly see the energy levels drop and Everton dropped deeper and deeper, which meant that they were hanging on towards the end. Everton did an exceptional job on forcing Ivan Toney into deeper positions to receive the ball. I know we're all really frustrated. We've all probably got him in our FPL team. We may have even taken a -4 just to get him in the team and captain him, and he didn't get a fucking goal. But we moved to Southampton in the week. Fingers crossed, okay. But yeah, you had to sort of move deeper to receive the ball because their midfield three was creating a really good shield that blocked the passing lanes from the midfield into Toney. And Toney, by being forced to drop deeper into the left of midfield to receive the ball, this made it easier for Everton to defend due to Damsgaard not making any runs in behind and Mbeumo being isolated on the other side. Idrissa Gueye is a player that I've kind of given quite a lot of stick over the last few weeks, but I think against Brentford he was excellent. He sat at the base of the midfield and had endless energy whilst others got tired. I think you could do that from that position. The concern with him is always on the ball for me. I think he can get caught out, but defensively he's always been really, really impressive. And Gueye made 4 tackles and interceptions, as well as winning 6 out of his 8 ground duels. He also made 3 out of his 3 dribbles, which is incredibly important because it allowed Everton to bypass the initial press from Brentford. And again, is that one area that I'm a little bit concerned about when it comes to him. So overall, massive victory for Everton. Got to win your home games. Got to win your home games against teams like Brentford. But I use that loosely because they've been so wonderful this season. But they got over the line. Huge 3 points, especially with other teams picking up points as well down there. Leicester City 1, Chelsea 3. The XG 2.52 to Leicester, 1.57 to Chelsea. Very interesting, that. But overall, Chelsea deserved it. And Chelsea are they back? Or is this a new version of Chelsea? 3 wins out of 3. I said on this show that you've got to kind of give him these 3 games, but this is the last chance, really, Graham. You got to show us something now. And I don't think it's always been perfect, but you can see them sort of creeping back when it comes to the confidence, getting that little bit of luck, which comes with football as well at times, and that has arrived at the right time, for sure. But Potter deserves huge credit. 3 wins out of 3, as I said, it's lifted the mood of the club. Everyone stopped talking about him getting the sacked as of yet and will continue to do so if they keep winning. But it also has allowed those players to finally play with that little sprinkling of confidence. And this allows Potter to finally imprint his tactical philosophy and style onto the team. And I think that's a big thing as well. There was lots of formation changes during the game, but overall, moving to a back 3, I think, has really, really worked, and it's allowed Chilwell in particular to thrive. The 3-4-1-2 formation seems to be working and allowing Chelsea to play on the front foot and utilise the skill sets of their players. The average position maps doesn't quite show this, but this because Chelsea changed their formation 3 times in the 90 minutes, which is kind of part of that Graham Potter style, actually. They started in a 3-4-1-2, changed into a 3-5-2 when out of possession, before moving to a 4-3-3 in the latter stages of the match. With Kai Havertz now playing as a 10 instead of that sort of central striker, I think we're seeing the best of him, or a better version of him for sure. And with Kai Havertz deeper, it allows Chelsea to have sort of 2 split strikers. It was really interesting. The split strikers in this one were Mudryk and Felix in this match. And with these 2 up front, as well as Sterling previously, I think it means that Chelsea have pace in behind. And that's always so important. And then they can look to play balls into the channels, something in which they weren't doing previously, and they were expecting the ball to feet all the time, which we used to go on about all the time. But hopefully we won't have to go on about it all the time anymore. This screenshot here demonstrates the split movement in behind from Felix and Mudryk. Kai Havertz was the man of the match without doubt. His heat map is particularly interesting with him not being the sole striker. It's allowing him to drop deeper to receive the ball. Havertz created 1 big chance as well as completing 31 passes and was much more involved in general build-up play. I also feel like if you're going to play on that counter-attack, to have him as the 10, he's got that energy to sort of catch up, and there will be overloads as well with those 2 split strikers, but him as not, a Chris Wood figure who's going to sort of turn around like a tugboat, and it's going to take him forever to get into the box. Teams that kind of press and leave space in behind are going to get burnt, I think, once this clicks a little bit. And I feel like this is how you get the best out of him, and this has to be his position, I think, moving forward. Lastly, we need to talk about his goal, the pass from Enzo. Fernandez is a joke. He looks really, really nice. Really, really nice as a player and a really good fit for them. And then the finish to go with it is just woof, you know. But one must beware hubris. Don't forget that Leicester created 2.52 XG from a total of 17 shots. Leicester actually had more shots than Chelsea in this one, and Chelsea did leave themselves open to this due to their tactical approach, leaving them open in midfield at times. Leicester themselves need to watch out too, because again, it's one of those, I think with Leicester and West Ham, we're going to get onto, it is a sort of one must beware hubris thing, because they are fighting for their lives, the guys that aren't as talented. Are Leicester City fighting for their lives? They've got the quality to stay up, of course. But they are now in 16th in the Premier League, and they are level on points with 18th place Bournemouth. This was Leicester's 4th Premier League defeat on the spin, after what was a tough run of fixtures, to be fair. But Leicester's next 3 opponents are Brentford, Palace and Villa. These are huge matches. They have to get some points from this, because they don't struggle to create chances, but they are just a little bit naive at times. I don't know what it is. What is the word, Leicester fans? Tell me. And they're also going to head to the Brentford game without Wout Faes as well, who's suspended. And that's a big loss, because he actually has had some nice moments for them this season. Leicester are confusing me. Can someone figure this out for me? Let me know. West Ham 1, Aston Villa 1, the XG 2.22 to 1.58. As I was saying when we're talking about Leicester City, and if you look at those teams down the bottom, there's only a few that haven't changed their manager. One is Leicester City with Brendan Rodgers, and one is David Moyes at West Ham. But is enough enough? There are problems at West Ham, and despite playing all right against Villa, I think that actually it sort of just highlights a problem at West Ham overall. You know, despite creating enough chances to win the game, they couldn't fulfil the task. It just stinks of staleness now. I wanted to give Moyes as much time as possible, and I think he has been given that. But it was interesting. I put on Twitter a poll. Now, stupidly, I should have put a third option saying, if you want to see what the vote is, and you're not a West Ham fan. But 56% said Moyes out, which I think is interesting. And I've given him a lot of time, but it's not really improved. The question is always, who are you going to bring in? And when are you going to bring him in? And how much are you truly flirting with relegation here? We're getting close though, aren't we? But again, I think we're getting to a point where it's almost too late to bring in a new guy. That said, we've seen that numerous times when a new guy comes in. But who would that new guy be? And would that new guy have the experience of Moyes? No. The tools to do what he wants? Maybe, but in a short time, are you really going to get that? Dangerous times for West Ham. Now, before we get into the West Ham failings in attack, we have to talk about how limp their defence was. Villa sliced through West Ham on a few occasions, and West Ham simply allowed it to happen over and over. I think the biggest problem is how easy it was for Villa to score their goal. The screenshot here shows the cross from which Villa scored their goal, and firstly, there is a lack of pressure on the crosser, and secondly, what is Thilo Kehrer doing? He has been a terrible signing so far. But what is he doing there? We actually need to go back in time up to about 2 seconds prior to find out the root of the problem. The second screenshot here, where we highlight the real problem. Because if you look at the average positions, we can see that Jarrod Bowen and Ben Rama are very advanced for the most part. What this does is it leaves the fullbacks isolated. Villa are a team who use their fullbacks to cross the ball, and this allowed them the freedom of London. This screenshot here demonstrates this, in a visual image. Look where Bowen is. Kehrer is caught between two minds and ends up doing nothing. It just feels like a group of people playing football. That doesn't feel like there's clear strategy. And going forward, West Ham underwhelmed massively. They had a total of 17 shots, but it took a penalty for them to actually score. A slightly soft one. The 17 shot stat is actually very misleading. Emi Martinez only had one save to make from the inside of the box in the whole 90 minutes. And the quality of chances, it just isn't there for me. And at the other end, they are allowing teams to create chances far too easily. Villa continue to quietly build. They won't grab any headlines just yet, but I think they are heading in a really positive direction. Ollie Watkins got his goal again on Saturday and is a player transformed under Emery, and I'm again really annoyed about that because I took him out to put Tony in. But he really is transformed. It's amazing the fact that Danny Ings moving across to West Ham has really just given Watkins that feeling of value there, and his movement and confidence when finishing is just fantastic to see right now. I generally think he may be on the verge of a recall for the England team, and how could you not? And with how well he's doing in comparison to other English strikers, I think he has to be in the squad in March. Fulham 0, Arsenal 3, 0.83 to 2.85 XG in Arsenal's favour. Now, are there huge red flags here for Fulham? The one thing I would say, I'm really sorry, Fulham fans, because we've been waiting for you. We were going to go, right, we're going to give you your moment, give you your flowers. But we've been unable to do that because you haven't really won since, or the game that you did win, I think we missed it for whatever reason. Anyway, there could be some problems here because anyone who watched this game will have noticed that Fulham were massively off it all around, and they had just had a really off day in terms of their standards. But was it an off day, or are there some red flags here? There was a lack of concentration at the back from Fulham, as Arsenal always looked 4 or 5 steps ahead of them at all times. That could be down to Arsenal being very, very good. It actually felt like Arsenal had an extra player sometimes. Not having Palhinha in the side, I think, also is a massive difficulty for them. Going forward, Fulham looked like sort of clunky, especially at home. You would have hoped for a little bit more. Maybe the sort of, I don't know, the time of the game, or the fact that Fulham are safe now is making them lose that little bit of bite. But they lacked a fluency that we've become used to from them. And when they won the ball in transition, their counter-attacks, they lacked clarity and it often broke down prematurely. Are we being a little bit too harsh here? Fulham fans, again, another question for you. How do you feel about that one? Do you think that's fair? I mean, you're playing top of the league and they're playing pretty well. But we could talk about how bad Fulham were on the day, but we also have to give huge credit to Arsenal, who put in possibly, I think, their most important performance of the season so far, because this result was important after those dramatic victories. You know, the 3-2 win over Bournemouth last week, the Villa game prior to that. Arsenal won this game in absolute comprehensive fashion. And they had the 3 points wrapped up by half time, and the goals were really good as well. It was one of those ones where you scrunch up your face for one of them, just going from one end of the pitch to the other. I think it's the Martinelli goal, getting the ball, switching the play, giving it to Xhaka driving, give it to Trossard doing Tete, I think, really easily, to be honest. Lovely little chipped cross to the back post, and Martinelli winning his header. Game over after 45 minutes. Absolute dream for the anxious Arsenal fans out there, because this should have been a tougher game. And the way they did it was so impressive. And I want to focus on one player in particular who may be one of the most important January signings in their history, or certainly in the Arteta era, Leandro Trossard. After being dealt a blow in the Mudryk pursuit, Trossard was obviously the second choice. And Trossard's role in the team as a false nine is just perfect in allowing others to get into advanced areas, offers creativity, a movement that pulls away players as well of the opposition. And after his hat-trick of assists, Trossard became the first player since Santi Cazorla in 2012-13 to score a hat-trick and register a hat-trick of assists in a single Premier League season. What a signing. So smart. He's so good. Gabriel Jesus also came on against Fulham, and now Mikel Arteta has a tough choice to make in regards to who plays. But he's also got the Europa League to deal with as well, so he can keep them all on a bit of a carousel. But in my opinion, I think you have to stick with Trossard for right now. There's going to be different periods in the season where, you know, you have an off day. And that's when you move it around and give that competition its chance to breathe, if you know what I mean, in terms of those forward players. That's why you don't say goodbye to Nketiah either. You keep moving it around. But right now, Trossard is the hot hand. You've got to keep him in there. The relationship between Trossard and Martinelli is really, really nice. This wasn't the first time where Trossard has assisted Martinelli this season, and having Trossard take up wide positions, it allows Martinelli to move into central areas. And with Martinelli's finishing ability, this makes complete sense and is something that I'm sure Arsenal fans are really enjoying seeing. But in a game that is often really rigid, there's a lovely flow about Arsenal when Trossard is playing up front. Tottenham 3, Forest 1, XG of 2 to 1.54 for Nottingham Forest. This is what this channel is about. If you are watching for the first time and you haven't hit the subscribe button, we're getting close to 250,000 subscribers, which is an absolute joke to me. So if you do want to hit that button, that would be really wonderful. But the reason why you might want to get involved is because I always want to hear your opinion. You guys know your team, and I love reading the comments. So I'm very interested to hear people's opinions on this game in particular, because Spurs started brilliantly. When have I ever said that? They look like they were going to batter Forest. And this is something that we've been wanting to see from Spurs for a while, and something that most people feel is something that they should be doing with the quality that they have in the squad. But in the second half, the levels dropped off significantly and Spurs invited pressure for about 45 minutes straight. The momentum bar honestly tells a story here. That story is that Spurs did what they had to do and then sat off. And I really don't think this is a good mindset for them to have. The important part of what Spurs did do well was committing bodies forward. This is a screenshot that was shortly before the first goal, and I like the position of Oliver Skipp that he picked up here. It makes sure that any loose balls fall to him, which allows Spurs to have control in attacking scenarios. But most importantly, I think it was that they were committing those bodies forward, and it meant that it became harder for Forest to firstly prevent the ball getting to Harry Kane, but also made it harder for them to put all their energy into stopping him. And by playing on the front foot, Harry Kane was able to stay higher up the pitch and to receive the ball closer to the box than he has been doing recently. I think part of that as well is the role of Richarlison, who is different to Kulusevski. He's more of a winger, Kulusevski, whereas Richarlison will kind of play up front with Harry Kane a little bit more, which allows Harry Kane to be a little bit higher up. And it also means that Son can kind of stay out of it, stay wide, and look to be that advanced forward. And I thought it worked at times. It's not going to work all the time, but it's about having that variation, but it's about being on the front foot to be higher up the pitch. However, the problem with Spurs was that they didn't do it throughout the game. Am I asking for a little bit too much when you've got that Champions League game? But they didn't really go for it in that game either, so they should be completely running out of gas. The thing with Spurs is that they sat back and they ended up conceding a goal as well as conceding a penalty late on. And against a better team, I think that they would have been punished for this. The problem for Spurs is that their defenders lack the quality to play that Catenaccio style that Conte wants them to play when they go a goal or two up. It's not all bad for Forest. I think they demonstrated that they are a decent side capable of troubling teams in the second half of this game. Forest had 8 shots, 5 of them on target in the second half, while Spurs only had 7, 4 on target. Forest created 1.51 of their 1.54 XG in the second half, which shows how the levels of Spurs dropped, but also shows that Forest do have the quality against the big 6 sides. I think the biggest problem for Forest was not losing this game, but the injury suffered to Brennan Johnson. If he's injured for a sustained period of time, it's a huge blow to Forest because no one else in the squad offers what he does. Maybe Emmanuel Dennis, but not really. Not really. Look at his average position in this game. This is where he is every single game now. And once they'd figured that out, Forest did much better. His ability to stretch, his ability to have that partnership with Morgan Gibbs-White, and for a team that does sit deep and then break, to have someone like him with his composure is so important to Forest. So fingers crossed he's not injured for too long, because I think we're now in that silly season where teams are going to start winning games they shouldn't be winning, and Forest could still get dragged into this. I have a problem. I think we've all got a bit of a problem here, because I bloody love Match of the Day, and I'd like to watch it, if that's possible. But obviously the face of that show, Gary Lineker, who has been the presenter of Match of the Day for 24 years, stepping back. The BBC has sort of put that forward.